Good evening, everyone. I'm David Johnson of Transformed Consulting. We have as our guest this evening, Dwayne Ray Cormier, Ph.D. How you doing, sir?
How you doing, Dave?
I'm all right.
Thanks for having me.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Transformed Consulting, there's a list of all the services we offer. And I'd like to give a shout out to my dear friend and colleague, Cassandra Williams, who is the brains behind Educational Innovation 360 Degrees. And there are all the services that she offers. And you can find us on LinkedIn, or you can just find our websites.
Thanks.
It's my pleasure to welcome Dwayne Ray Cormier, Ph.D. He is founder and CEO VSorts and founder and CEO Culturally Responsive Solutions. He earned his doctorate from Pennsylvania State University. His research focuses on the socio-cultural gaps within educational settings, particularly the alignment between educators' beliefs and their teaching practices. He has developed tools that measure and bridge these gaps, fostering cultural competence and critical consciousness among educators. His dissertation introduced the Cultural Proficiency Continuum Dialogic Protocol, a tool that assesses pre-service teachers' awareness of diversity in majority-minority schools. He consults and creates high and low-tech resources to enhance teacher-student relationships and address opportunity disparities. His efforts are dedicated to nurturing an inclusive school environment that values and leverages the richness of student cultural assets. Impressive background, sir. Very impressive. And I have lots of questions for you. What is VSorts?
Yeah, glad you asked. VSorts is essentially a software which is inspired by my dissertation. You could think of it as a dynamic survey platform that uses AI to assess qualitative inputs or users' text either through audio or speech, and use it to understand maybe individual teaching disposition or kind of organizational things like sense of belonging.
Well, I'm going to ask you a lot more questions about the VSorts and the software and how it actually works. But then tell us what Culturally Responsive Solutions is.
Yeah, so Culturally Responsive Solutions is my consulting arm. So essentially, I do things very similar to you, but I'm usually a consultant as a thought leader. And yeah, just kind of, you can kind of bring me in and kind of do what you need me to do. I like to kind of roll my sleeves up and work with my clients. And hopefully there's some new opportunities that I learn between that dynamic and they can go on and do their thing.
So in your work as a consultant and your work in culturally responsive solutions, does that tie together with VSorts and the software from VSorts?
Yeah, so essentially, VSorts is like a doing business as, and then we do an R&D via NSF grant to develop the platform. And currently we have a couple of prototypes on machine learning models that can assess cultural competence. So we're going to get ready to put those in some of our user interfaces and do some beta testing.
Now, you mentioned your NSF grant, National Science Foundation grant. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life outside of my dissertation. Essentially, it's a National Science Foundation Small Business Innovation Research Grant. Essentially, the idea of VSorts technically was born I think October 15th, 2015, thereabouts in class via my advisor, Dr. Bernard Badiali. And, but just wanting to get this thing off the ground as a business, I kind of stumbled into the NSF opportunity. And once I stumbled into it, I applied twice, got the second shot, and they gave me some funds to develop a prototype. And hopefully they like our work and we get some additional funds to scale the business to hopefully a K-12 school near you.
Very impressive. Now, I want to know more about the Cultural Proficiency Continuum Dialogic Protocol, a tool that assesses pre-service teachers' awareness of diversity in majority-minority schools. Dwayne, that's a mouthful. What is the protocol? What is the protocol?
Yeah, essentially, I'm understood as a mixed method researcher. So I use quantitative and qualitative tools to try to understand objective truths or facilitate the understanding of objective truth. So kind of before going to school and this and that, I'm actually from Texas. So I grew up part of my life in Liberty, Texas, and then I went to Beaumont and graduated from Westbrook. And I just always, I grew up in a boys' home, foster care situation. So I always had to be a student of my cultural surroundings. So I was, maybe when I was younger, I used to want to be a psychological profiler that gives you context into how I see the world with regards to sociology and psychology. So this protocol was designed to essentially meet people where they are and assess their cultural competence by introducing them to vignettes or scenarios, and just giving them a safe space to unpack those scenarios, and essentially having a thought partner to unpack that with enough knowledge to understand why maybe a white woman from central Pennsylvania would come to not understand why asking a black girl to perm my hair is problematic, right? So it's because I think the reason why people are culturally incompetent is we don't have the contact. We don't have the experience with the other. It's like going to the gym. You can't bench press 300 pounds until you can bench press 100 pounds. Mm-hmm. So if the first time you engage someone that looks different to you, 19 years old, and you've been socialized in essentially a monolithic context, yeah, that it's safe to assume that person is going to have some gaps.
Well, I have plenty of questions about that, but unfortunately, we have only a half hour. But here's another quick one. If you can answer this one real quick, I have seen and heard confusion regarding the term majority minority. Now, clarify what majority minority means.
Yeah, I get pushed back on it, but this is probably where I do believe in some variables and some understanding. Like, we earned, this term became an idea because of the fights and the social justice work to get us here. And then now we get here, we want to switch it up. But the way I think about it is essentially majority minority context is when white people are the minority in that context with a variety of diverse people. So it could be, if it's like say people of color, or a monolithic of a group of people of color. If the white folks or white students or white families are minorities in that context, then that's what it means by majority minority, because they're still majority overall, but in these little pockets, sometimes we have the numbers.
Really interesting. And I would have another zillion questions to ask regarding what majority minority means. Also some other terms in here that I would like to discuss, but perhaps we better move on. But I wanted to make mention of this. What are you doing up in the middle of the night? Sir, I write you in the morning and you write me at midnight. So what are you doing, riding all around the world in the middle of the night?
No, it's like I say, this NSF project it's I actually have a book chapter due for a book for Teachers College Press that this NSF project, it gets in the way conveniently. So just, working on the business, trying to get ready to submit the phase 2 application for this project so I can scale this project and hopefully affect change in schools. And so unfortunately, as a founder of a software company, going to bed at 3:00 is quite common.
Well, I just wanted to tease you on that. Well, our topic today is artificial intelligence, education, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very, very interesting. And I am anxious to hear how AI is connected to D, E, and I. And we have 3 topics or 3 subtopics: addressing disparities between schools and marginalized students, tactics for uncovering and eliminating socio-cultural gaps in schools, and AI tools to assist educators in evaluating cultural competence. Dwayne, where would you like to start?
No, it's on you. You can pick.
I get to pick? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Describe to us what AI is so that we're all on the same page.
Artificial intelligence, that is essentially a machine that uses algorithms, which have been, the common ones you think about OpenAI, those are machine learning networks or natural language, large language model networks that are trained on gobs and gobs of qualitative data and validated by humans, or attempted to be validated by humans, or even other machines. And then if the model is pretty good at predicting or, kind of simulating human-like behavior, they make it out into the world. We've been using AI for a long time. You think of things like Grammarly, That's an AI. That's a natural language platform. So AI has been around us. A lot of time your bank will use it to determine your credit worthiness. I just think now that AI is very accessible and people can get their hands on it, it's just a hot topic at the moment.
Well, why is so many of us reluctant, hesitant, or even fearful of AI?
No, that includes me as well. I think I just, if I had to make a guess, I think it's just our relationship to science. And I don't want to generalize. Like, obviously, there's great, scientists of color, but I don't know if we ever been the wielder of the power of science. Like, we never been in a position to use science to oppress, people, et cetera. So I just think that, anytime that you get close to sciences, also with the idea of AI, there's a lot of black box kind of ideas where like a lot of the stuff is behind a black box. It's easy, and our relationship as black folks, we always seem to have these awkward relationship with black boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just think it's just historical. And
well, I would
it's a
imagine
historical
that
thing.
many of our audience members today are truly interested to hear how artificial intelligence could enhance D, E, and I, because so many of us have had the experience where AI discriminated against us.
Yeah. Yes, I think so. Before I was a middle school science teacher, so I'm very into science in general. Um, and while at Penn State, I worked in the College of Engineering, so I've always been around scientists, scientific type folks. Like, I like science, so I'm curious. So for me, just like everybody else, I'm just curious about AI. But I think the opportunity now is that this technology is accessible. You know, you can engage with AI with no code. I mean, it's very accessible. So, and I think when it connects to DEI, I use it to essentially act as a buffer. A lot of time people are not in position to be maybe honest or truthfully about, maybe their racist attitudes, sexist attitudes, or whatever. So if you can create, kind of user face activities with AI to kind of help develop someone's cultural competence, I think that's a good idea. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm more about trying to facilitate solidarity. I don't need to be in a hot seat to be the one to do it. If I can do it through an avatar and I'm feeling better and treated better, and my children are feeling better and treated better, I don't really care how it happened. Just let's get it to happen.
Well, let's take one of your bullets: addressing disparities between schools and marginalized students. Speak about some of the disparities that occur within schools.
Yeah, I have a term that I've kind of operationalized. I borrowed it from something Geneva Gay wrote in 1993, but social cultural gaps. Again, my own childhood experience, fortunately has put me in a position to have I'm going to dance with racism. Because, we've seen what people in our past tried to do with racism and they no longer here to talk about it. So if I can figure out ways to kind of get within the system, understand the system, and look at it from a different point of view and almost reverse racism out of our lives, I think that's the approach I take. So with social cultural gaps, it's this idea where I think it's this combination of cultural competence and critical consciousness, meaning that I think, say for educators, I think many educators understand what's going on, but do they have the critical consciousness to trouble what's going on in ways that affect their own personal goals, right? So a lot of time a teacher sometimes is caught between a rock and a hard place. So yes, I may want to advocate on behalf of this, but one, is the stress worth it? Whatever, right? And I think that it's tough, right? I mean, a lot of us see a lot of injustice. Do we always say something about it? Do we always step in and advocate and do the work to undo that justice? So I think a lot of gaps are socialized, and it has to do with economic power, whatever.
Okay. That was my next question. What would be examples of the disparities? You mentioned economic. What other disparities? I know you spoke about educational opportunities disparities. So what other disparities?
So when I think of opportunity gaps, I think one big disparity is like geography. That could be, say urban, rural, but even within because you follow, essentially we can predict the environment of a school based on how much money they get, right? How much support they get, how much, property taxes, things like that. So I think, a lot of disparities are unfortunately from a geographical point of view. So, and when those geographical centers have, poor economics, you're going to have, unfortunately, under-resourced schools.
Other disparities you might want to mention?
I think geography, again, when it comes to like your place. So like, say if you're in a rural community, are you kind of in the pathway of opportunities? Like if you're in a rural community and there's no economic development, that's going to be a reflection of your school. Schools are generally designed to feed into economic systems, right? So if there's no economic system for you to feed into, it's like, why invest in the school?
Some terms you used earlier in our conversations was minoritized and also otherized students. Could you elaborate on the meanings of those terms?
Yeah, I just used the ED to essentially show that it was something that was done to us. I didn't wake up and say I'm a minority. You did that to me. The system did that to me. Oppression did that to me. I woke up as Dwayne. Trust me, I wouldn't wake up calling myself a minority, right? So that's why I use the term minoritized. And actually, it's also something that's pushed in APA. So American Psychology Association also encourage us to think about those who are oppressed from, using that distinction versus minority. So.
And how would you address those disparities? And even with the technology that you're so well adept at using, would technology be a vehicle for addressing those disparities?
I think so. I think, my hypothesis is that if I can increase people cultural competence together with their critical consciousness, they would feel compelled to do the right thing, to do the work, right? I think sometimes you may have a whole lot of cultural competence, but you don't have the critical consciousness. You don't have the motivation. And a lot of it is if you never experienced something, like if you never, had to eat water for dinner, how can you even have the empathy to make the connection, to even have that critical consciousness be triggered in a way that will compel you to do the work to create liberatory pathways for your students or their families? So
now I think many of us are familiar with the term cultural competence, but could you elaborate on critical consciousness? You mentioned empathy. Would that be a part of critical consciousness?
I would say the cause and effect. I think it's a Freirean concept. So it's like the capacity, it's like a critical pedagogical framework. Essentially summarizing, I'm being very brief here, essentially the capacity to identify social, cultural, and economic contradictions, right? Political contradictions and within the system, right? So yeah.
Okay.
So those contradictions, do you see them? And when you see them, again, what's going to make you get over the hump to actually do something?
Okay.
What gets you to go protest? What gets you to hey, you know what? I'm going to give this person an extra 30 minutes, or I'm going to stay after school and work with them for additional 40 minutes, right? Or whatever, right? I'm going to stop talking about students, and maybe I keep extra shoes in my car, in my desk file cabinet. Or if a student comes in with not the best hair day, why talk about the student? Bring them to the bathroom, get the grease out, get the rubber bands out, do their hair, and increase their sense of belonging. It's those type of things. Like, the notion of being educated, we most of the time are students' parents, aunties, whatever we need to be for that student. To me, that's what social cultural, gaps is addressing. Like, you are going to stand in the gap for that student, whatever they need, right? They need a mentor, they need a teacher, they need a father. You're going to give them that.
Okay. Your protocol seemed to be targeted to pre-service teachers. Is there a particular reason, or what would be the particular reason that is targeted toward pre-service teachers? When we talk about, and as you spoke just now, that a teacher should stand in that social, cultural gap and fill that space.
Yep. Well, to be frank, I went to Penn State in central Pennsylvania. That's all I had available to me, to be honest with you. So it was convenient sampling.
I see.
So I did my research in a pre-service teacher, but to be honest, on a serious note, most of those teachers were going to urban spaces to work.
Mm-hmm.
And where they did their training at was overwhelmingly, it was, it's Penn State. So, professor kids, everybody most likely had some affiliation to the campus. So, high, upper middle class kind of environment. However, so learning that environment, what was you going to take from there to an urban school? So what my protocol does is essentially introduce them to concepts that take place in urban or rural schools across race, gender, sexuality, whatever. And we try to develop their metacognition so that when that scenario happens, they at least have some tools that they can grab to react to that student in a culturally appropriate way.
So, in a sense, what you are talking about is developing their cultural competence.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And and you're doing that before they leave school and actually become service teachers, in-service teachers.
Yeah, but to be fair though, cultural competence is a lifelong journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you, I would never be expert at cultural competence because the world changes daily, right? And then that's limited to your neighborhood, then to your state, then to your country. Then if you go to another country and travel, mind blown. So if really the best position to be in is that I'm an ongoing learner based on the data that's provided to me that day in that cultural context, right? So that's, you gotta be open-minded and just
so at least raising
agile and flexible.
sensitivity to differences.
Yes. So I think the thing you should be trying to master is, you're not the center of the universe, and that we all come from different backgrounds. We are shaped and molded by different cultural, emotional, psychological factors, and you need to be in a position to be open to a different world or reality than yours. So
one of the topics you have is tactics for uncovering and eliminating socio-cultural gaps in schools. What would be some of the tactics?
Well, in theory, we've been kind of talking about the tactics, developing your cultural competence, which I would say through experience, right? But do things in an organic way. Don't show up like, hey, I'm the male in this all woman space, or hey, I'm the white guy. No, just show up, be your authentic self, right? And position yourself in a way where you can learn and receive things in a more passive and organic way. And if you're uncomfortable, you should be uncomfortable if that's your first time. So you're developing that muscle, right? So those biases will hopefully begin to flatten. I mean, it's natural to have biases, especially if you're new to an environment. But if you chose to be an educator, you got to disrupt your problematic biases. And I think just, introducing yourself in very organic ways, a good way to start is fostering student teacher relationships, teacher family relationships, know your families, and they'll take to you, and then you kind of organic, and it's not going to happen in a year. This is a lifelong thing.
Now, regarding uncovering, would the protocol that you develop help people uncover the gaps?
Yeah. Actually, the protocol was quite effective of not just uncovering the gaps, but showing the particular nuance that they may not understood. So let's say I go back to I think I had one example on there, like asking a biracial student to perm their hair for a college visit, right? Now, the who said that was neutral, but sometimes when people speak to it, because everybody has a different orientation to that scenario. So maybe for some of my white pre-service teachers I was working with, they didn't understand the concept of perming. Because when they perm, their hair curl. When we perm, their hair straighten, right? So it's nuance, right? And so then if they say, oh, you straighten their hair to be like, oh, my straight hair, then they make the connection of whiteness, right? White Eurocentric beauty standards, right? So it's really this facilitated aha moment, hopefully, if the teacher is coming in there with the best intention, saying that I'm going to surrender myself to the game of teaching, which means that my white fragility will probably be tapped quite often. But just like when I go to the gym and pump iron, there's going to be a day that white fragility, I won't feel that no more, right? Because it's just, I have the muscles and and the cognitive structures to kind of deal with that process.
Wow, Dwayne, this is some deep stuff. and I have some other questions, but I'm looking at the clock.
I just hope it's legible. I mean, does it make sense? I'm hoping I'm not sounding crazy over here.
Well, see, I'd like to talk about that fragility thing and wonder whether, well, you talked about building muscle and you use a reference of lifting weights and going to the gym. Now, I understand that completely. If someone is lifting weights for the first time, that person's going to experience some pain. Exactly. So how do you address the pain of recognizing that you're experiencing white fragility?
Well, this is where empathy comes in, right? So, white fragility is one of many forms of cognitive dissonance, right? That's how I think about white fragility. So there's stimuli, someone who's experienced, which I've experienced white fragility, right? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you a story about these glasses. Only thing real about them is a brand name. I have 20/20 vision. Mm-hmm. But I wear these glasses to kind of, I have a nickname for them, but I probably won't use them on this podcast. But essentially to detone or detune how my Black maleness may show up. Yeah, so with these glasses, it acts as a buffer, right? So, but it's no different than maybe someone who is homophobic, right? Yeah. So there is some sense of fragility to that, right? And then, so I think these are just different forms of cognitive dissonance. And unfortunately, for when it's racialized, it's just a hot, sensitive, divisive topic. But again, if you're a person that's choosing to be an ally with any group of person, you're going to go through you will be fragile on the front end. But if you are committed to showing up on the right side for that person more often than not, you got to take them lumps.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can touch your last topic for just a second here. We have 2 minutes remaining. AI tools to assist educators in evaluating cultural competence. Have we been speaking about that already regarding the protocol?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah, I think I shared what the protocol does. I mean, is there any precise question you would like to ask about the protocol?
Yes. Again, I would imagine that so many of us who are watching this tonight or participating tonight are thinking, how do you connect AI with DE&I? I'm wondering, is that what you mean? AI tools to assist educators in evaluating cultural competence?
Yeah, I got you. So essentially, the process that I used to do was a very manual process, right? So I used to do all that by hand. So essentially, I developed AI agents to help me with because I read all of these teachers' responses by hand, code them, triangulate them, right? However, it's taking me 2 weeks to get that information back to the teacher. That ship has sailed. So with AI, I can kind of get these insights really in real time. And then I go in as a human and make sure that the insights are, classified correctly, whatever. And let AI intervene with that person when it's needed to be intervened with versus when that ship is sailed. So that's how I think the connection is actually creating opportunities for learning closer to the time of happening versus a week or two after the phenomenon has happened, if that makes sense.
Well, Dwayne, I'm very, very impressed with your background, and we could speak for another 2 hours, I'm sure. But unfortunately, we're running out of time here. So if we could boil all this conversation down into a simple takeaway, what would it be?
Empathy. Just be open-minded and have empathy. If you are an empathetic person and you meet people at their humanity, overcoming any social culture gap is easy. Like, the work that my wife does, and I won't get into the detail of the work she does, but she's probably one of the most empathetic people I know. She has this gift to suspend all judgment and do the work. And I think essentially that can be, parallel in education. Don't bring your own assumptions to the classroom. Meet students, meet people where they are, and use the best data to create the best outcome for that student. So.
And what would be the call to action? What do you want people to do with this knowledge, this information?
I think since COVID, we've kind of been used to these kind of platforms, Zooms and videos and this and that. If someone, nod your head back. We getting so short with each other that we can't even have these nonverbals no more, right? So I just think we need to get back to being people and engaging each other and welcome someone saying hello to you or good morning, right? versus this kind of individual space we kind of being driven to. So
Yeah.
that's all.
Well, Dwayne, I said I could probably speak with you for another hour or more, and I'm sure others are thinking the same thing. So how do you want people to contact you when they want to know more?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess they can find me on LinkedIn, Dwayne Ray Cormier Works. Culturally responsive solutions, that's all over the web, I think, and VSorts. So you get to any of those platforms and just contact me. I'd be happy to reach back. And it's the same on all the social media platforms as well.
Thank you, sir. Our guest this evening was Dwayne Ray Cormier, Ph.D., and he's the founder and CEO of VSorts and founder and CEO of Culturally Responsive Solutions. Find him in LinkedIn or follow his website, and you're on all these different platforms, so people can look for you there as well. It's been great having you as a guest, and I hope to see you again. And thank you all for visiting us tonight and spending part of your evening with us.